Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's HDI webinar, Game On, Using Gamification to Motivate and Engage. I'm Megan Selva, and I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. If you experience any difficulty with the webinar itself, you can get help by clicking on the yellow question mark icon at the bottom of your screen. Please note that we will not be having a live Q&A session today, but please use the red Q&A button below to submit questions and we will respond to them later. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. To chat with others who are attending today, please click on the group chat button at the bottom right of your screen. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. You may also download a copy of the slides by clicking on the green folder icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you experience any technical difficulties, please type your issue into the Q&A text area and we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. Also remember that today's webinar will be available on demand starting at this time tomorrow, and you'll receive an email reminder to let you know when it's available. You can connect with HDI on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on hdiconnects.com, where you can read a blog, ask a question, or find a solution. Joining us today to discuss our topic is Monica Cornetti. A gamification speaker and designer, Monica Cornetti is the world's #1 gamification guru according to UK-based Leaderboarded. She's the author of the book Totally Awesome Training, Putting Gamification to Work for You. She writes for the Gamification Report blog, and she hosts the weekly Gamification Talk radio program. Monica received her MA in Economic Development and Entrepreneurship from the University of Houston, Victoria, and her BA in Psychology from Seton Hill University. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Monica, and we are here to talk about using gamification to motivate and engage. And thank you for being with me today. And we're going to take a quick deep dive into gamification and how you can use it. Gamification is definitely the buzzword of 2016. And as your workforce continues to get younger and younger, I believe you're going to be very excited about adding gamification into your help desk, talent development, and employee engagement mix. And in the help desk, customer service, customer experience, and employee engagement field, haven't you heard that gamification is in high demand and that it will continue to be for at least the next 7 to 10 years? And just like other industries, such as e-learning developers and corporate training, if you do a quick job search, you'll start to see that gamification is on the list of preferred, if not required, skill sets. But why? Well, there is a new normal. If your employees or your clients or your customers were born after 1971, then there is a new normal. And that new normal is the gamers, or what we refer to as the G generation. The G generation is over 56 million strong. It's a combination of Gen Xers, those people born between 1965 and 1981, the millennials born since 1982, and now we have the Gen Zens, those that were born after 2001 who have begun to enter your workforce and customer base. And right now, the G generation is moving up in the business ranks, becoming managers, partners, and eventually CEOs. Chances are you manage employees from this generation, and in all likelihood, before you leave your career, you may be managed by them. And the boomers, those of us who were born between 46 and 64, who grew up without video games, will have to understand the gamers. That means not only learning what they're all about, but finding ways to redesign organizational onboarding, engagement, training, and even how work is done. If that sounds unlikely or unreasonable, you may, like me and many people, have not realized that the G generation will change business because of who they are, how they grew up, how they see the world, and how they go after what they want. But we all play games. We just may not even realize that we're playing them. For example, when you think about having to do a boring task or chore, don't you sometimes find a way to break that into smaller bits and say, well, if I do this, then I can reward myself with that. Like last time you had to clean the garage, you thought, okay, when I'll do 20 minutes and then I'll reward myself with something. Or how about like your daily exercise? I do a little routine on the treadmill where I tell myself 2 more minutes, just run for 2 more minutes. If you don't feel like running after the 2 minutes, you can quit. And as the end of that 2 minutes comes around, I say, well, that's okay. Why don't you try another 3? But you can quit after the 3 minutes if you want to. That breaking it down into smaller bites, the kind of scaffolding and cascading of the total 45 minutes helps us to complete something that we don't really want to do. One of my favorites, if you have to fight rush hour traffic each morning, is what I call rush hour roulette. You know that you have to look at the clock and calculate what time you need to be on the road. And if you miss that by 3 or 4 minutes in either direction, you'll be stuck in traffic. And even though you wave a friendly good morning to somebody in your neighborhood, as soon as you're out there on that highway, it is now you against them. And you are now working against the other people on the road to get to your destination. And then I have one that I call the alliteration activity game that helps us to get things done that we really don't want to do. And in fact, there's a link here. You can follow this link to the free gamification ebook that I put together on how to use the alliteration activity game each day of the week to just do one thing that you weren't really wanting to do and turn it into a game. The reality is we all play games every day. And how can we use the elements and the psychology of games to attract, retain, and develop high-value employees? That's what gamification is all about. So let's define it. What is gamification? If you Google gamification, you'll find that we're still trying to nail down a definition. Ask 10 gamification gurus the definition of gamification. We'll give you something that looks like this with some slight variation. But the definitions will all center around the main point that you see on this slide. Gamification is motivational design. It's the use of game elements and game mechanics in a non-game context in order to engage users and solve problems. Now, gamification is not designing a game. We can use games, but it's not designing a game. Rather, it's taking bits of game design, bits of game elements, game mechanics, game psychology, and moving that into a non-game context. And forward-thinking organizations everywhere are beginning to understand how the power of gamification can increase engagement as well as their bottom line. Let's go through some familiar examples of gamification. Probably the most famous is McDonald's Monopoly game. So September, October, McDonald's rolls out their Monopoly game. They see a revenue increase annually of about 7% when they do Monopoly. Now, when you're talking 7% revenue increase in McDonald's bucks, that's a lot of bucks. And why is that? Because we now suddenly want to eat more McDonald's? Well, we go into McDonald's and we buy a Coke and we get to peel off that little player piece for a chance to win $35,000 or a brand new car. Chances are we're going to win hash browns or another Coke. But even when it's a prize we weren't really wanting, the fact that we won that prize and we're collecting those game pieces keeps us coming back for more. Another one that has mastered gamification and changing behaviors is frequent flyer programs, or what we call FFPs. If you think about any kind of loyalty programs that you have, whether it's a hotel or an airline, you will change your behavior to keep adding up your points to maintain your status and your level. And in fact, at the end of the year, what happens is called the end of the year run-up. So if you've got a certain level in a loyalty program, and you're checking your points and your numbers, and you're looking to say, oh, you know what, I'm about 600 short of where I need to be to maintain this level or go to the next. For airlines, people will buy a ticket to fly somewhere they don't want to go so that they can maintain that status and that level. Now think about that. Because of the perks that you get with that status, because of the status that you get, the shorter lines, first on the plane, access to the lounge, people will spend money to go somewhere they don't want to go to maintain that status. Now that's behavior change. And another great example is just LinkedIn. You know, you log into your LinkedIn profile, they've now started ranking you among your connections, and you see your profile strength. Well, that all-star profile strength is never going to get any better than that. You're almost there. The circle's almost full. They'll ask you a few more questions, and you think, okay, I'll answer these few more questions, and surely I'll have attained where I need to be. But the gamification component of that, the motivator, is that sense that we need to complete something. And so we answer a few more questions that we don't want to take the time to answer. Why does LinkedIn want us to answer those questions? Because they use that data. They sell that data. They sell the demographics for ads. Now, they don't sell your individual information, but they take that and they pull it all together to sell ads. So the more information they can get us to give them, the better their data is for their customers. So that ranking and the profile strength, all of those are components of gamification design used to change behavior. Now think about it. What badges, levels, or rewards have you earned via rewards programs or a social game? I mean, make a list of your frequent flyer programs that you use. Do you have coffee shop, dry cleaner, restaurant, hotels, rental cars, airlines, grocery stores? I mean, even Big Lots has a program and offers discounts and special shopping hours. And why have those programs matter to you? Why have they gotten your loyalty? Was it that you got status, access, power, stuff? So what about in your organization? Can you use gamification internally to motivate employees or improve your customer experience? I say yes. We just need to learn how to do it and do it in the right way. Getting started with gamification can be overwhelming and intimidating. And if we break it down, if we follow a process, we can do it. Gamification should always start with 5 major components. We made it into an acronym that we call GAMES, just as a simple way to remember it. But GAMES, spelled out, is your goal, your adventure, your method, engagement, and then thinking it. Now, this is our trademarked at Credential Gamification. We have trademarked our process for doing this. And we have designed and trademarked our board game, and we'll use this game board. And those of you who are registered for certification on April 12th, each of you will go home with your own game board so that you can use it for gamification design. And when you look at these levels, there's 30 spaces on the game board. So the complexity of gamification, if we follow the process, just like anything that we learn, if we follow the formula, follow the process, we can learn how to do it. So let's start at the very beginning, and let's take a quick walkthrough of how we might do this. If you look at the game board, the second place in the game board is about your player profile. Gamification always should start with the player profile. Who will be playing your game? And what will motivate your player or players to engage with the game and act in a way that you need them to? You see, gamification is 75% psychology and 25% technology. It's important to understand who'll be playing the game and what motivates them. There are two general types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. Of course, intrinsic refers to those internal motivations such as autonomy, mastery, and meaning. And extrinsic refers to external motivation techniques such as money, trophies, punch cards. All of us have fundamental needs and desires for reward, status, achievement, self-expression, competition, and altruism, among others. These needs are universal. They cross generations. They cross demographics, cultures, and genders. And you may already be hitting some of these human desires with practices you're already doing. But because we really haven't focused on it up until now, many of us are not. However, game designers have been doing this for years, and we can do it with gamification. In this table that you see on the slide, the green spot for a particular mechanic is the sweet spot. So the mechanics are those going down the left. Points, levels, challenges, those are what we call game mechanics. The sweet spot for what motivation and human desire it hits is that green spot. The blues are ones that they also hit. So levels, such as belts in a Six Sigma program or job titles, or being executive platinum in a frequent flyer program, they're primarily about status in a community. But they also hit on individual achievement because it feels good to get to the next level, and competition because it feels good to be a higher level or beat your friend. In just a second, I'm going to put up a slide, and we're going to try an example of achievement. I'm going to use a stopwatch and count for 60 seconds. During those 60 seconds, I want you to look at the numbers on the screen and count them in numerical order, starting at 1 and counting as high as you can as you find each number on the slide. At the end of 60 seconds, I'll ask you to stop. And I want you to write down that highest number that you've reached so you can remember it. So are you ready? I'm going to pull the slide up, and I'm going to start the timer. Okay, stop. Write down that number. Don't count anymore. Okay, now we're going to try it again. But this time I'm going to give you one tool, just one tool that's going to help you improve. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. I'll pull up the slide, and I'll start the stopwatch, and then we'll go to 60. At the end of 1 minute, I'll ask you to stop and write down the number that you've reached. Okay, are you ready? We're going to do it again. I'm going to give you one tool that's going to help you. Go. Okay, stop. Write down that number. Did you improve from test 1 to test 2? That's what you did. Now let's think about that for a minute. What human desires is that tapping into? Well, of course, achievement, because we were able to improve. But if you were doing that in a group, it may also include competition, friendly as it may be, or status, comparing yourself with how you did to other people in the room. And by adding the lines as a designer, I helped you move towards mastery. I gave you a tool that would make the process easier. And so when we're thinking about designing, we want to think about how we can help people move towards mastery by giving them tools to do that. I want you to stop for just a minute and think about what you're feeling. You're thinking about, I really did get better. Oh, it made it so much easier with those lines in there. That sense of accomplishment, the desire to share this with somebody else and show them how it works. Those feelings, that accomplishment, that desire to share, that, this is fun, that's what we want. Those are the elements that we want to take from game design and move them into gamification design. Now, when you think about achievement, and typically in gamification, we talk about like points and badges and leaderboards, those are all for that achievement motivator. But not all your players are going to be motivated by achievement. So if we just do things like points and badges and leaderboards, we'll be leaving out a large percentage of our group, which when we go back to complexity of design, that's where we're talking about we have to know who our players are and what will motivate them. For some in your group, the altruism, the sharing of, well, here, let me show you how to make that easier. Let me help you. That would be what would motivate them. So this all ties together, and this is what we're trying to accomplish in gamification design. Back to our game board, and still in level 1, what we want to make sure is that we know what our business objectives are. Starting your gamification journey without knowing your overall business objectives will take you on a road to nowhere. Gartner Research Group predicted that by the end of last year, 2015, 80% of gamified business applications would fail to meet their business objectives. 80%. Now, of course, that's no different than any other change initiative in the workplace. But before you start the gamification design process, you should ask yourself, well, what are my business objectives? Why are we gamifying this process or project? And will gamification help us to meet those business objectives? So we cover all of that in level 1 of gamification design. Now let's move on to level 2. Level 2, and this is what makes Sententia gamification design unique, different from any other design out there, is level 2 for us is about creating an epic adventure, creating a story, creating a narrative. In storytelling, the interaction becomes personal. It's engaging. It's immediate. These characteristics allow storytelling to capture the attention of your audience. It enhances understanding of information or a learning experience by providing a social context for learning. Storytelling also promotes emotional engagement. If you've read anything about employee engagement, there's something that's called transactional engagement, where people feel committed to the project, and emotional engagement, where people feel committed to each other. Now, we, of course, want them committed to our project, but transactional engagement actually causes stress and burnout. Emotional engagement creates long-term valuable employees. So the storytelling helps to create that emotion and positive outcomes in the workplace because employees have made strong ties to their coworkers, to their bosses, to the organization, to the company values. And again, storytelling can be a complex strategy, but as certification on the 12th, we'll give you a variety of story writing tools. We'll show you techniques and tips and tools that you can use because there's no need to start with a blank page. There are a ton of resources out there that you can use to create your stories, and you will use the narrative as a common thread throughout your gamification design. We then move on to the next level, which is our learning. In any organization, there are different things that you need to learn to properly perform a job. And we need to make sure we have a right mix of learning activities. Each new knowledge or skill builds from a previous knowledge or skill. So, for example, a learner needs what we call declarative knowledge, facts, jargon, acronyms, before she or he can understand concepts. A learner needs to understand basic principles before they can apply them to solve a particular problem. So the flow of knowledge acquisition from one level to another is important for the overall learning process. So it's important to realize when we're creating a gamified process or learning in our organization that one type of knowledge ripples to another. And they're all dependent upon previous knowledge. So in our design, we have to make sure that there's the right mix of learning activities. That's level 3. Level 4 is where we get to the game mechanics. This is what most people think gamification is level 4. That when they think gamification, they think that it's all that it is. But as you notice, we don't even put this into level 4 because there's so much more you have to do before you start doing the game mechanics. Game mechanics are those things that trigger behavior change. When you think about game mechanics, there are over 300 game mechanics you can use in your gamification design. And if you remember nothing else from this webinar, I want you to write this down. Write down this little phrase at certification. I'll keep coming back to it. 3 little words. Less is more. Less is more. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Just because we have a mechanic that we think, oh, this is fun, we could put this in, and then we could do that, and oh, what about this? I love taking chances. And oh, let's make sure we put a stop and a countdown clock on it. All we might end up with is a very muddy, cumbersome design. Just because there are 300 game mechanics doesn't mean we should use 300 game mechanics. We should really start running lean and mean. And we can add to it the longer the process is that we're adding gamification to. Mechanics are the trickiest part of gamification design because, again, it goes back to what mechanic is going to motivate our individual players. So we walk through those mechanics and we start with just a few in our design. And at the end, that brings us to level 5, where we tie it all together. And this is where we call the think it. It's the S in game, to think it. How cohesive is our design? Have we made it something that people want to engage in? Is it pretty? Is it attractive? Is it fun? Were they able to personalize it? Did they get to design an avatar that they could upload rather than having some little gray dummy figure that's taking them through the whole program? Have we tested it? Did we do a beta test? Did we iterate it? Did we make changes? And the very, very last space on this game board is to ask the question, is it fun? Because if we haven't made it fun, then what are we doing? Gamification should be adding fun to business processes, making our business processes more compelling by making them more fun. If we haven't made it more fun, let's just keep it the dull and boring that it was and not do all the work that it takes to add gamification. Now, that's a quick run-through of the game board. At certification, we'll spend 6 hours going through this so that you have a solid understanding of how to pull these 30 spaces together. But let's take a look, just so I can not just talk theory for you, but just give you some ideas of how you might implement gamification for your help desk. Let's look at metrics, for example. When you think about a sense of accomplishment, think of 3 metrics that matter most. For example, for an individual agent, there might be support ticket resolution, the number of quick, quote unquote, whatever that is, resolution, and then, of course, positive customer feedback. The sketch that you see on the screen is a typical user interface for an agent's queue with navigation to the left and tickets in the center, Across the top, there's a counter tracking those metrics. So every time the agent would resolve a ticket, the resolutions tally increments by 1. Quick resolutions are a valuable metric that will differ from help desk to help desk. And of course, we have to be careful with those quick resolutions. So we'll talk about that more in design, but we don't want to just reinforce quick resolutions because I'm sure you've all been down that road where you're not getting the behaviors you want, although it was resolved. Okay, that's done, but was the customer satisfied? Although research shows that a majority of customers do leave favorable feedback when their resolution takes 15 minutes or less. So, but the quick resolution metric will be those maybe under 15 minutes for a tier 1 issue, 30 minutes for tier 2, and so on. Of course, it'll be different from help desk to help desk, but you want to set times that are relative to average resolution time for tickets that you handle. And then, of course, the thumb up indicates how many people left positive feedback. A great way to track this is to add a link to the bottom of every resolution ticket that invites customers to leave feedback. So, for example, was your issue resolved properly and in a timely manner? Give us a thumbs up. For every person that gives a thumb up, the agent will see the thumbs up counter increase. Adding that element is a quick heads-up display that shows the agent exactly what they're getting done and how they're doing with their customer. Another idea is a leaderboard. Of course, we're all familiar with leaderboards, but let's think about doing a team leaderboard. Most organizations have parallel help desk operations. So, for example, customer service superstar Zappos has multiple help desk teams that are all working to answer service tickets across the organization. Each team tracks their own metrics, and most of the team leads choose to make their metrics public because they enjoy the healthy competition it creates. The team leaderboard takes this idea and puts it into a help desk UI. This would allow teams to benchmark their performance against their peers and compete to be at the top of their game. Organizations like yours could opt to provide some sort of reward to the top performing teams. And then, of course, with training, we want to instill a sense of accomplishment right from the very beginning with training. The benefits of this is twofold. Gamifying the training process allows new agents to feel like they're making progress in their onboarding process. It also addresses one of the major concerns for all help desks, and that is, of course, training time. Because when agents are training, they're not serving your customers. So imagine turning the training process into a timed game. You could use gaming terminology and refer to the training modules as challenges, add a timer for each challenge, letting the agent know that they only have so much time to complete it. They need to prove their mastery of the material at various stages. And then if they're tracking everything, you as a manager can go back and identify issues and errors and review them so you make sure that they're actually learning the material, not just getting them done in a specified time. To be sure, you cannot simply add gaming elements to a system and expect success. You have to take a closer look. Who is your user? What's their motivation? And how does this align with the success of your organization? So by now, you've realized that career prospects are limitless and rewards are high. And I'm going to ask you to buckle your seatbelt because we're going to take it up a notch. We're going to get a little bit on a bumpy road. We've covered the 5 levels of gamification design. And I want us to talk about some things that we need to very much be aware of in gamification and design for reality. First is, what does it cost? Gamification can be extremely costly, and it can be a barrier to entry for some. If you think about games and simulations, there's a large time commitment, cost, testing, implementation. But gamification can be done at a reduced cost by moving it more into a low-tech arena. And it can be done in about the same time frame as traditional instruction, for example. It doesn't have to be online, alternate reality, mobile application. You can go more low-tech. And if you've not seen the Chapman Alliance research that breaks down the true cost of developing training, you can email me and I'll send you a copy of that report. So my email is just monica@monicacornetti.com. Just send me an email and ask for the Chapman Alliance research, Chapman Alliance research. And I'll be happy to show you that they break it down for everything from an instructor-led up to a fully immersive, alternate reality, user experience, fully developed game, and what it costs per hour of development. Monica@monicacornetti.com, Chapman Alliance. When we think about gamification design and that it can be extremely costly, we also have to remember the Gartner research that I referenced that said there'll be an 80% failure rate. Now, I don't want to be someone who spends a lot of money adding gamification to something and realize that, wait, there's an 80% failure rate. So how do I make sure I do this correctly? So I would be remiss if I did not share with you the 4 major mistakes that everyone makes when planning their first gamified experience. Let's go through those together. The first mistake that everyone makes in gamification design first time through is to identify why. They fail to answer the question, why are we playing? So instead of asking yourself, how can we leverage gamification in our organization? We need to begin with clearly defined objectives that gamification is suitable and a suitable technique or strategy to achieve those objectives. So let's start with that. Many people confuse goals and objectives. A goal is a general guideline that explains what you want to achieve, but an objective, on the other hand, typically defines strategies or implementation steps to attain the identified goal. So objectives are specific, measurable, they have a defined completion date, they outline the who, the what, the when, the where, the how of reaching goals. So we have to be crystal clear on what your project's objectives are. And the more specific your project objectives are, the greater your chances are for achieving that. So, of course, I'm all about fun. We want to do it for fun. Well, it'll be fun. Yes, it'll be fun. And how is it going to help us to retain these high-quality employees? How is it going to help us shorten completion time for our tickets? How is it going to improve our customer service? And we have to have very clear objectives on what does, for example, improve our customer experience. What does that look like? Improve our customer experience is the goal. The objective will spell out who, what, when, where, why, how. The second mistake that everybody makes in their first gamification design is failing to identify who the game is for. I mean, think about it. Why do some people engage in a game while others just disengage in frustration? Why do some game elements appeal to some people, but they have no effect on others? The problem is based in our personal motivation profile, which is core to who we are, our personality, how we make decisions. And we have trouble understanding the perspective of those whose profile is different than ours. And this is where breakdown often happens between the gamification design and the people who will be playing or interacting with that. There's a gentleman that we use for our gamification design. We use his scientific research, Dr. Stephen Reese. He has what's called the Reese profile that identifies 16 core motivators that all individuals have. And he identifies that problem of thinking that people are the same of us. He calls that self-hugging. He says that not only do we believe that everyone should be like us, but we actually believe they are like us. So in gamification design, it's important to realize that you as a developer have different motivations for playing than most of the people you encounter. So you don't want to assume your players want to do things the way you want to do it. You have to talk with your potential players, interview them, find out what really makes them tick. The third mistake everybody makes is attempting to fix a broken product or service with gamification. It's very common misuse of gamification, attempting to fix something that's already broken. It's like the time my youngest son, when he was about 13, he went through this craze where he was cooking and baking, and he baked us a cake. And the cake looked really good. I mean, had sprinkles on it, swirly designs. I mean, it looked really delicious. And we thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be good. But on the first bite, I was kind of puzzled because although the icing tasted as good as it looked, it was apparent that there was something amok with the cake. And when I took the second bite, my fear was confirmed. There's something wrong here. So trying to be nice, I said, Joe, icing's great, but what's wrong with the cake? And he just started laughing, and he said that he had misread the recipe. And he put in 3 tablespoons instead of 3 teaspoons of baking powder. So if you use baking powder, when you do that, it just makes the cake really bitter. And he was hoping the sweetness of the icing would compensate for the bitterness of the cake. But instead, it just left me wondering, well, why would you take all the time and energy to decorate this cake and make it look so good, but the cake itself is terrible? Now, the same is true for your gamification design. When you do it right, it's colorful, it's fun, it's inviting, it looks like something people want to do, it draws your users in, and they'll want to taste it to see if it's as good as it looks. And when they find out that your product quality doesn't match your marketing language, or that your customer service department should actually be called the customer torture department, they'll wonder why you bothered gamifying the process. It'll appear that you were simply trying to disguise just a broken system. So first, you have to solve the problem of a bad product or bad service before you can truly leverage the power of gamification. And then the last trap, again, that everyone falls into is thinking that what we call PBL, points, badges, and leaderboards, thinking that that's all there is to gamification design. And of course, when you do that, that's the ones that are going to fail because it doesn't work. Of course, we want to include points. We want badges. We want to badge them early. We want to give them points early. We want to have leaderboards, perhaps team leaderboards. But we also have to realize that that doesn't motivate everyone. Not all games are created equal. Omnicare is a great case study example of this. They have a help desk which provides support for pharmacy management software. And in an attempt to improve efficiency through gamification, they added a leaderboard and issued cash rewards to employees with the fastest times on the floor. So they gave them points, and they had badges, they had the leaderboard, and then the employees with fastest times got cash. Okay, but the results were that wait times actually increased, and employee turnover spiked. Ouch. So why would you get that kind of result? I thought gamification is supposed to make things better. But see, it turns out that the high-tech help desk employees didn't view the game output as positive feedback. They saw it as Big Brother watching over them. They didn't like it. So Omnicare had to change and improve the system by focusing the rewards around a series of achievements instead of timing. So you can't just say, okay, we're going to decrease, we're going to make sure that we have faster times and then we're going to reward that. You could end up actually getting the exact opposite of what you were hoping to achieve. Can't just slap points, badges, and leaderboards together and call it gamification. So you can see that to be successful in gamification, you have to have a clear understanding of what gamification can achieve. You must have a practical method for approaching gamification in your organization. And you've got to learn how to adapt a gamification strategy for your program. And we're here to help you do that. Contentia is a global consortium of gamification professionals. We have a 5-prong approach to meet the business and performance objectives of our clients. And that includes gamification design strategy, process audits, a speakers bureau, off-the-shelf training programs, and then education and certification. And with the HDI 2016 conference, we are doing a pre-conference session where you can actually earn your level 1 gamification apprentice certification. And the great news is that there's no coding skills required. You don't have to know how to code. You don't even have to be a gamer to learn how to do this level 1 gamification. We are the only gamification certification for talent development and talent management professionals, and it's recognized and approved by HRCI, SHRM, and ATD for recertification credit. And as a certified gamification professional, that credential serves as a visible acknowledgement of your demonstrated mastery of core gamification principles. So I want to invite you to join us at the certification. You can sign up at the HDI 2016 conference website, sign up for the pre-conference session. Remember that there's no coding skills required. It's a full-day session on Tuesday, April 12th. I want to thank you for your time today. I hope that gave you a quick look into how you can use gamification in your organization. And I'll see you in April. And thank you for joining me. Make sure that you email me any questions, comments, or concerns that you have. And take action today and register for the pre-conference session. Game on, everyone.
Thank you for your time with us today, Monica. As Monica mentioned, she will be presenting a pre-conference workshop at the HDI 2016 Conference and Expo, which will be in Orlando, Florida in April. If you're interested in learning more about the conference and about Monica's workshop, visit hdIconference.com. Please fill out the feedback form that has opened on your computer. To complete the form, please press the Submit Answer button at the bottom of the page. Thank you in advance for filling out the form. Your participation in the survey allows us to better serve you. Also, please join us for our next webinar on Tuesday, February 16th, where Joe Ardizzone will be presenting on best practices in alerts and monitoring. Again, thank you for attending today's webinar, Game On, Using Gamification to Motivate and Engage, brought to you by HDI. For more information related to today's webinar, please visit any of the resource links in the panel on the right. On behalf of our speaker, Monica Cornetti, thank you for your time and have a great day.